noting that at 7:01 p.m. on October 2nd, 2024, I'll call the Board of Health meeting to order. And the first thing that we'll do is the board members will announce their presence. So Daryl Beardsley present.
Steve Constantine present.
Julie Dreyfus present.
Diana Hook present.
Rebecca Honeywell present.
Okay, and would you like to bring up the agenda, or should I? Oh, okay, or Jessica, or anybody? Okay. So no variance hearings this evening, but we do have a number of other items, and actually didn't notice probably one of the more complicated topics that we'll be discussing is 65 Farm Road. So let me just check participants.
Yeah, and Daryl,
Oh,
if
yes,
I
Bob's
may,
here.
I know the applicant has indicated he prefers to call it Lot 3 Farm Road, just for note,
Oh, all right.
because 65 encompasses other parts of the property.
All right.
Thank you.
So let's take that one first. And Mark, I was hoping first you can go through just the basics regarding the septic and well plan. And
Sure.
then we'll address the open drain issue
Yeah,
later, because that is a little more complicated.
that's fine. I'm just going to draw the plan up here. And we did receive a revised plan, as well as a letter from the engineer, who's Deshang Wang, in response to my letter sent out this year, August 22nd, 2024, in respect to deficiencies. It is known as Lot 3, in parentheses 65 Farm Road. We received on September 28th of last week, 2024, the revised plans. I reviewed those plans with Jessica to make sure the deficiencies were corrected. The only deficiencies pending, and the board has seen this before on the Greenwood lots, is the legal boundaries is the first one. The locust plan. The locust plan did not show the section for Lot 3 on the 65 Farm Road. So you're right on the locust plan right now to the upper right. And you'll see it shows the entire lot, not just Lot 3. I did ask the engineer on Monday of this week if he could superimpose Lot 3 onto the 65 Farm Road lot that's being shown, and he was going to send it electronically. I have not seen it. If it came in this afternoon after 1:30 or 2 o'clock, then I'm not for sure of. But and the other main item that's pending is the discussion on the open surface drain. On the septic plan, you'll see it shows at the base of the property a pipe, which has been discussed, and I was just looking over the December 2021 November 3rd, 2021 minutes, and that right now is 65 feet from the edge of the soil absorption system. And we require, if that's an open surface drain, that be 125 feet. So those will be, I think, the legal boundaries. The board has set a precedent that we don't release the plans until the legal boundaries are determined. But the other two will need to be discussed, the locust plan and the open surface drain / pipe that's shown at the base of the lot. You'll see it at the base of that plan there.
I don't know if you had a chance to speak with Deshang, or we can ask Bob. Is the issue of the locust plan linked to the legal boundaries still being outstanding? Are those really
no, so
part and parcel of the same
Sure.
thing?
I can help, and then by all means, Bob, after I just note what I was going to say, feel free. Deshang said he could superimpose it onto the locust plan that shows it just as one large lot is 65 Farm Road. And Bob, go ahead. Do you know if he's done
sure.
that?
So he sent that to you yesterday at 10:46 a.m. Mark.
Okay, that plan I'll look for right now. Thank you, Bob.
I'm talking about the corrected locus
Yep.
plan was
I
sent to you at
appreciate that.
10:46 a.m. yesterday.
Okay, I'll look that up and see what we have.
I'd also be happy to send it to you. I did upload the revised plan.
Oh,
ahead of
okay,
time.
so we have that revised. So is that revised plan available, Jessica?
It is. I could pull it up if you want.
Thank you so much. It's been busy, so I may have not seen that come through. I appreciate it.
Jessica, you'll share. Thank you.
Pulling it up now. Okay. Um, okay. Let's see if I can zoom in.
There we go. Thank you, Jessica. So now you'll see and I didn't realize it, you'll see that there's I can look at my plan too. There's 2 lots shown now. One, obviously there were 2 lots on the locust plan too. That would be 55 Farm Road and 65 Farm Road. I didn't realize this lot, when it's superimposed, you can see it's also on both of those addresses as noted, it's 55 and 65, but now it's shown, which is very good for us in discussion to know its exact location. And it looks very close to what we reviewed on the actual plan, you know, with the jogs and the lot lines and so forth. But that helps the board to understand that Lot 3 is encompassing both 55 Farm Road and 65 Farm Road as shown on the locust plan. Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, so it looks to me that in terms of what we've done in the past regarding the legal boundaries, that both of these items could be addressed similarly, you know, when they are confirmed and then updated on the plans, et cetera.
Well,
That
to clarify,
makes
Daryl,
sense.
the locus has been taken care of. You've been given that.
Yes. Darrell,
Unless
that is
for
correct.
some reason the legal boundaries change from what's shown here. That's all.
No, the legal boundaries for the proposed lot will be done as they have been on a number of projects that you've approved in recent times. They will be approved by A&R, and the way you've handled that situation is you approve the plan and you release it subject to my sending you the planning board endorsement and the recorded A&R. That's what we did on all the
Thank
lots.
you. That's basically what I mean. We need confirmation, whether it requires a change to the plan. The change to the plan it does need is the certification statement.
Yep.
Right? We've been through this
That is
before.
correct.
That needs to be on the plan from
Yeah.
the engineer.
Sorry,
or
what
the surveyor.
certification statement?
If I can help, if I may,
Yeah,
if you look
please
just
do.
above, if you look at the plan next to the locus, there are several notes. They're kind of tiny, but I got the larger plan here. Note number 11, and Deschang has done this for Greenwood as well, the Greenwood lots. No, the other notes, I'm sorry, Darrell, the ones right to the left of it. Note number 11 says that these lot lines will be legalized. So what Deschang has done in the past is he will resubmit the plan noting that those lot lines are legal lot lines.
We can
and
do
the
that, but
planning
I
board
will,
has approved it.
we can do that. I have no objection to doing it, but I will tell you that when I give you an A&R that's been recorded, the legal boundaries, I've proven that they're legal boundaries by doing that. So it seems like it's a bit, well, you're just adding things to the plan that are not required and don't need to be there, but we will be happy to make that change for you.
Yeah, and if I may
Actually,
add, yeah,
a
it
lot
is
of
required.
people will come in and ask to see plans or new homeowners, and it's really helpful for them to have this in one place. And Mark, if you have something.
No, and
to
that's
add.
been the procedure for the past times when we would not release the plan until Deschang changed note 11 on this plan to indicate they are legal lot lines, and he usually puts a note too that the lot lines have been approved by the planning board.
We'd be happy to make
that's-
that change in the final print that we send you, not a problem.
That's fine. And that's the plan that we would release once that's available.
Okay. Does anyone else on the board have any questions about that or comments? No? Okay. So I think then the outstanding issue is the open drain, which we've talked about a little bit at meeting in September. And it's been an interesting issue for us because we haven't seen it be relevant very often, and the basically the reasoning behind whatever board decided to include the open surface drain issue. I understand it's definitely, this kind of thing is talked about extensively in stormwater management regulations, pollution prevention planning, many documents. The issue of whether surface waters can become contaminated by any activities is taken very seriously across the country, federal, state, and local levels. So it's largely an outgrowth of that. But we've done some research about, for example, why did the state set theirs at 10 feet and what do other places do? And it's not crystal clear yet what it is, but so we have this regulation that we are applying. It has bearing on this project and perhaps coming related activities. And as the plan stands now, it would not meet the requirement of the 125-foot setback from this open surface drain. I'd like to talk about that because for most of the things that we look at in our regulations, it's well known to us why the regulation is the way it is. In this case, it's murkier. And I'd like to talk about that. I have to say for myself, there's a bit more research I'd like to do because what input we've received thus far has not been concrete enough, I think, to make some determination on this about what is this 125 feet a reasonable number, and or should there be other conditions associated with that number that define things such as we do with well setbacks from septic systems, which is you consider the perk rate, the rate at which the effluent can move through the soil. Is the septic up gradient or down gradient? And I think those kinds of things might be more meaningful to consider for this setback. Again, because it's so different than the state, but I know that I wasn't able to attend, but there was a meeting with a subject matter expert who had worked at DEP, I believe. Jessica and Mark were there, and Julie, I can't recall if you were also able to attend, but I was not. I think the information covered in that initial meeting from what was relayed to me was more general in nature rather than detailed about how the state arrived at their number. And so that would be something that I'd be very interested to hear more about. And and make every effort. And if there's anyone else interested in researching, in doing that before our next meeting, to come up with something to see whether we want to consider a variance, which we never do for new construction. But in this case, I feel that we have a regulatory requirement that we can't fully explain at the moment and evaluate. So first, I'd like to keep the discussion within the board. And then Bob, I'll make sure to recognize your hand up later.
Daryl, normally before the board talks about it, you'd want to hear the presentation from the applicant, I would think, no?
No, I think that
No?
right now I'd like to address just the issue about the setback regulation that we
Can I just put out one fact? Is that possible?
Okay, go ahead.
This board if you look at the plan, just to the left of it, on 53 Farm Road, there's a septic system that this board approved that was also well inside the setback that you're talking about tonight. And so I'm not clear on why 53 Farm Road was approved with the same issue by this board. And, you know,
I'd be happy to explain that.
Okay, great.
Okay. So when 53 came before the board, it was called out that this feature existed. It was included on the plans by, I believe, DeShang. And in researching what the importance of open surface drains are and how they're defined by environmental organizations, primarily as a conveyance of stormwater, something that's just episodic, associated with storm events, and to convey stormwater to a different location. At that time, and there had been a drought ongoing for a while, at that time we had no evidence that there had been water in that. Calling it a drain, we should also come up with a better name for it. Swale, I think, would be better, because drain seems to be more associated with pipes in a lot of people's minds. So I think that the terminology is confusing. So I'm going to call it swale at the moment. So there wasn't any evidence that water had been flowing through that. We went ahead and approved the septic, and then not long thereafter, we got rain again, in a particularly rainy period, and I believe it was in the winter. And a number of board members had witnessed and Mark, I think you might have also, that water was flowing through that swale. So it was clear then that it did function that way. And then not long thereafter, the town plugged it. So again, now it was no longer conveying water. So it's been through a number of iterations with the board, and coming and going, and its existence and information about it.
Yeah, and
So
I didn't
we
actually
didn't have,
saw our video.
Oh,
Sorry. I just
yeah,
wanted to make
just one other thing. Yeah, we just didn't have the data at the time classify it, because we had no information that said that water moved through it.
So let me just clarify.
To terminate it. Hold on, we're still, let's keep it, I'll recognize you. Please raise your hand. So, all right, that's it. Mark, what were you saying?
Yeah, Daryl, I actually didn't go out to the site, but I did see a video. So I can't remember who provided a video, but it showed the swelling of the water coming off the road in that winter event that you mentioned. I just wanted for the
Oh, that
record.
was a second winter event. I think the
Oh.
first time around, no, a few years ago. And then I think it was maybe last winter that we had, when it was not, I don't think it was open at that point. That was water flowing, sheeting off of
Thank you.
the land. So at that time, so that's generally what the issue was. So now we're in a different place. It's opened again, and we have knowledge of it conveying water. So it's a different situation than before. Julie.
I was just going to clarify those dates, Daryl. So the permit for 53 Farm was approved in November of 2021. It was in May of 2022 that the pipe was plugged. And then it was more recently in fall, October, November of 2023 that it was unplugged, if that helps kind of span the timeline. But in addition to that information, I want to maybe parse this out a little more finely with the distinction here of we currently have this application before us, and which we will need to act on. But we also have, the question of if and how we should update our regulations. And of course, that update would not apply to this, but I see what you're saying, which is there can be a variance granted and acknowledgement of that potential change. The idea of granting a variance to new construction with the possibility of a regulatory update. And again, I agree that we need to better understand why the 125 feet was set, and that is not clear. That makes me really anxious. And that is something that I would feel more comfortable talking to town council about first. I think what makes me feel a little more consistent, again, I know 3 out of 5 board members were not here in 2021. And so one of the responsibilities that I feel that I have is to try to be as consistent between iterations of boards, given that's a hard thing to do when you have many different people coming on and off of boards. But when I look at how, and I don't know if everyone was able to review meeting minutes. I know I found them very helpful, and I was very grateful to Ellen for all of the detail that she includes. It was interesting to see how the previous board had discussed this swale. And ultimately, they did grant that permit. And at the time, they did not feel that that swale was a particular risk with the proximity of the SAS at 53 Farm. And I'm afraid I don't know what the proximity of the SAS was at 53 Farm and how that compares to what's being proposed here on Lot 3.
It's about 10 feet different, Julie. You can see it on the plan.
I don't have a measuring tool, Bob. That's why it's
But I'm telling you,
Yeah.
they're both, 65 and 75 feet. They're not close to 125. They're both non-compliant with that metric.
right. And so I think what I feel more comfortable with, and this is what we want to talk about as a board. And Bob, this is why we're kind of asking you to hang on and let us have this discussion, because this is the only time we can ever talk about this is in a public meeting. And sometimes that's really hard to do with a bunch of people watching you. I feel more confident in continuing what has already been done, which is the board kind of identified this as, the discussion was more or less a water course, and then we went into a discussion around water course, and there was consultation with DEP, of which water course really pertained to those that fall under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. And that this did not rise to the level of concern that DEP would have relative to an SAS. And so kind of that satisfied the previous board. And I completely hear what you're saying, Daryl, which is, at the time, there was no evidence that there was, any flow going through that system. And it was a period of drought, and so that made it extra challenging. But from a regulatory standpoint, it seems like best practice to treat this consistently, because it is the exact same situation that is just coming back to us years later. And yes, we have additional data points, but I think that is data points that informs how we update our regulations. And I don't think that's necessarily data points that changes how we treat this today. But I'd like to hear how the other board members think about this too. I think, Bob, we want to keep the discussion amongst the board, but we will circle back to you.
May I? Turn this off. Hold on, I turn this off.
Okay, Diana?
I had a question to just better try and understand why it is that we have a pipe going underneath Farm Road from one property to another? Was it at one
Okay,
point a single piece of property and so that was done? Because it just, I'm not understanding why that even came about.
Yeah,
And in terms of updating the regulations, how that was allowed to happen if it was two different pieces of property.
I can share the time. Oh, I'm sorry, Daryl, maybe you want to know.
no, go
All
ahead.
I was going to start was, it was, the information that was relayed to me was that, this was installed somewhere in the 1970s. And so there is functionally a catch basin on the up gradient side of the road, and then there's another catch basin on the down gradient side of the road. And then there is an outlet that alleviates that down gradient catch basin. And then there, at least at the time the board had previously reviewed this, and one of the things I'm not sure of is the existing site conditions, but at least looking at the plans from back in 2021, there was what was described as a swale. I don't think that that is what was ultimately permitted, is what was actually put in place, was my understanding. But it's maybe Daryl, you have more to add, or maybe that you want to call on someone else from the town to inform that.
It was back in the late 70s, I believe, and it was a less formal process, and it was to try to prevent water from running across Farm Road, freezing, and causing accidents. And so a pipe was put in to move it underground and get it to the other side of the road.
If you all would like the history
No,
of
no,
how
no, no,
this
no, no.
happened, I would be happy to give it to you, but you're putting out false facts. If you need the history, nobody knows it better than me. I'm not going to lie to you about the history of what happened. I have researched it and I know it. Why don't
Okay,
you
thank
want
you,
to
Bob.
hear the facts?
Okay, so Diana,
Maybe Diana
It's
wants
the-
her question answered.
Bob, please allow the board to have its discussion.
And go away
Bob.
from facts and reality? Why? The board should be informed by truth and facts. And you're not allowing me to tell Diana the history of what happened when she just asked for that history.
Diana, do you wish to
Yeah.
hear from Bob?
Well, I guess my question was, who owns the pipe? Is that the town?
I can answer all of
town
these
installed
questions
it.
for you, Diana.
The town installed it because the residents who lived there at the time wanted a solution to problems that were going on. In addition to the water traveling across the road, was a basement was also getting.
Daryl, your audio just cut out.
Am I in?
Now we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay. All right. It exists and we can't change it, and the town is wrestling with it and has gone back and forth, which is also what led to, we were, once it was plugged, it became a non-issue because we had also looked at it once we knew that that was how it was performing, was as a conveyance for stormwater, which then was more like an open surface drain, truly, and functioned in that way. It was a concern, but then it got plugged and then it was no longer a concern. So. But it's there and the setback is not being met.
Darrow, just so you know, Stephen has been raising his hand a couple times.
His real
Yeah,
life.
okay.
I'm just trying to get a better understanding of this. I know the two terms that I saw was one's a water course and the other one's a swale. And again, I've got need to get more familiar with that. Is the water course feeding the swale? Is that the way this works? And if so, now that the water course has been plugged, is that no longer, again, I'm just trying to get a better understanding of the background.
Yeah, so the pipe went under the road. It discharged onto what is now 53 Farm Road. And there was a depression there. So it didn't rise as, it didn't rise up as an issue. Hello, whoever, can you mute whoever you are?
I think it was Brian.
I just muted.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. It didn't rise up to a concern for the Conservation Commission because it doesn't have soils nor vegetation that are typical to a wetlands. So that's another, this has nothing that would suggest like a stream as an environmental aspect associated with it. This is just a depression in the land. It was clear at the time that there was a depression there, but otherwise you wouldn't really notice it.
And the depression was the swale, correct?
Yeah, it was like a swale. It wasn't constructed. It probably formed as a result of the water coming out of the pipe over a long period of time. And yeah.
And with the pipe now being plugged, where does that water go and how often does it get discharged?
So the pipe was plugged for a while, and then I forget which winter, last winter, the one before, can't recall anymore. The road started getting inundated with water, and given that it was winter, it got icy and it got dangerous. And so it was unplugged sometime thereafter.
In October, November of 2023, it was unplugged. So between May of 2022 until October, November of 2023, it was plugged, but at present, it is unplugged.
So now it could function that way again. It has moved location because there was a lot of work done where the swale had been. So it's changed it where it's running.
You're
And
just
are both the
repeatedly
swale
saying
and
incorrect
the-
things. I mean, why deal in falsehoods? You just
Bob,
keep
I've
repeating
looked at it
false
extensively
things.
in the past. Bob, excuse me. I looked at it extensively in the past. The original location and the new location still carries water, and it's in a different spot.
It hasn't changed. Nothing
It
has
has
changed.
somewhat. It has
That pipe
changed
has
by
not
virtue.
moved. That pipe has not moved. I can promise you.
The
that
pipe is there. That's not the open surface drain. The pipe is, that's why I started using the term swale. We're talking about the depression in the earth. The pipe has nothing to do with
There
our
is no
regulations.
depression in the earth. AECOM was hired by the town, came out and looked at it, and literally
Bob,
said there's no depression in the earth. We've got to deal in science here, not in made up facts. There's no depression.
Bob.
AECOM wrote this.
Bob, please respect the board's wishes that we're trying to have a discussion among the board. And do not interrupt. I would appreciate that greatly.
Daryl, if I can continue
Yes, please do.
so the swale and the pipe, are those on private property or are those on public property, the town's property?
The swale is on private. The pipe is partly on private, and it also runs underneath the road.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Daryl or members of the board, has an independent engineer evaluated this since the new changes have been made to the original water course since the town made changes? Perhaps that would be the way to address this objectively, to have an independent engineer evaluate the situation from the perspective of the Board of Health's concerns and the decisions that we need to make on behalf of the greater interests of the town.
Rebecca, could you clarify when you say changes? I want to follow you and I'm not sure what you're referring to.
The original water course was changed by the town 2 years ago.
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't changed by the town. It was changed by virtue of the change in the contours at 53 Farm Road.
That's
And
incorrect.
so it shifted where it was flowing to be closer to the road. And I will find and provide to Jessica so that she can either post somewhere or send it out to folks.
So we're
some
having
videos. The
conversation
difference
here.
of one and another.
Right, but at the time, the town made some changes at the time,
No.
and it has been described by our chair that this was opened up. Is that not considered a change?
Are you referring to the plug and unplug? Is that what you mean by the changes?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
That is a change
That was
that
done.
affect
Yeah,
the water flow.
That was done by DPW.
Correct, I understand that,
was-
but that was,
yeah.
I'm calling that the town. It was agreed between the Board of Health and the DPW. Everybody gave input and the final decision was made that this change would be made. And ultimately, what we're discussing is the manner in which water flows here and whether or not there's an implication for contamination and potentially public health. That's why we're having this conversation. So I would say that there has been a change, and that's why we're having this conversation tonight. And based on that, because everything that we say we're being accused of making false statements by the applicant, whose engineer has a perspective as well. And I'm only wondering whether our board would want a third party to weigh in who has technical expertise in engineering. We know that the Conservation Commission has weighed in, and Daryl herself mentioned that it seemed more complicated because there are multiple issues, but I was just wondering if you would find it valuable to have somebody with some engineering experience who doesn't have a conflict of interest weigh in.
I think where I am is more that we have this condition from what, having been on the board at the time that this first came up, this is the condition that had we had the information at the time, we may not have approved the permit for 53 Farm Road. However, I think that this warrants some examination of what the reasoning is, and I know what some of the reasonings tend to be. I do a lot of stormwater work for clients and protection of surface water bodies, and so there are issues that could be applied to this, and I think it's worth investigating as to whether this 125 feet is an appropriate number or not. And as I said, whether other things should come into play, and whether at this time we need to consider more of the science behind this regulation, because we're being asked to consider this issue now with this project. And even without going to a regulatory change, might this be something that needs more work to determine whether it's reasonable or not to apply to this property and project that's before us? And we're not going to make a regulatory change in time. That's a months-long project to make a regulatory update between the research, the drafting, the having discussions in our open meetings, with getting comments from folks, then crafting a final update, publishing it, and then having a formal hearing. Many months to do that. And I think it's reasonable, even though I do not like the idea of variance to new construction, because that's just something we typically don't do. But here we're encountering a part of our regulation where we can't wholly explain, like, what are the issues of concern, or we can explain what the issues are, but we can't quite pinpoint, is this a reasonable requirement associated with this situation?
So
And that's what I would like to get better information on. Again, I think the subject matter expert provided kind of high-level guidance, but not the specifics. And if we can find who in DEP knows why they have 10 feet, that would be a starting point. Like, why were they confident that 10 feet was appropriate? So where's their evaluation? To me, that would be a starting point that they just didn't get to within the time allotted for the prior meeting, didn't get to that issue.
Well, I agree that it's
I would like to
a good
understand
idea
that.
to get that information. I think that would be helpful, but I also don't think we should be making variances to our regulations unless, I think the onus is on the person, the onus is on us to prove that it's safe, not to sort of say, oh, well, we don't really know why this regulation was established, so therefore we're going to give variance. I think we need to prove that it's going to be safe before we make a change. I think that you're correct. Absolutely. We should find out from experts who evaluated it, the justification for their decisions and then try to learn from that. And then with that information, we can make an informed decision. That's why I was suggesting perhaps having somebody independent weigh in, because that there's a value to that.
I would rather get information from Mass DEP, frankly. That would be my highest priority if they have access to what led to the creation of their regulation.
Yeah, I think that's what I just said, but yes.
I certainly welcome, I agree, that would be great, and I think that's important for the future. The part that I'm getting really caught on is that was not the standard that we have previously applied to this same swale. That's what we're calling it. And the
Except at that, yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
and I think that's I'm stuck on consistency. And that's the part that I'm challenged with. And I absolutely welcome research. And I think that that is critical for our future action and what we do with this. But I'm questioning if we are being consistent with how we are applying this regulation. And I feel like we're applying it differently. And I'm not comfortable with that.
And I guess I don't view it as the same situation. When the board made that decision for 53 Farm Road, it was unaware that water was actually coming out of the pipe and flowing through that. And therefore, when we talked to the DEP about how they regarded these things, they were clear that they relied on Conservation Commission, because those were, though, for more streams, I wouldn't call this one a river, certainly, and wetlands, and it didn't meet CONCOM's criteria. It designated it something that needed a setback from it. So that was different than what this would be for, which would be potential impacts of could effluent from a septic system reach an open water course, then flow somewhere else and have an impact elsewhere. That's pretty much what goes on in the stormwater world, is where are sources of pollutants, point and non-point sources, and how do you prevent them from entering surface water bodies and being conveyed elsewhere or impacting the receiving waters. And so to me, that's a big distinction. So I can't see with new knowledge that it does operate as something that's conveying stormwater and potentially other materials. So I can't see us making the same decision because we have new information. But I also feel that it's reasonable for us to ask questions about this regulation because it's not clear. Our depth to groundwater, very clear. Perk rate issues, very clear on the science. This one, not clear. And I think that kind of questioning of things is an improvement, cuts both ways.
And now,
learn more about the dangers of things, and maybe we learn that, is this an issue or not?
so if I follow the train of thought, Daryl, then if, let's say we can gather this knowledge and make a decision.
Quickly. Yeah.
And if we, I mean, what you had said previously is the next step, because we have an application before us, would be to grant a variance, right? And again, I feel like that's a slippery slope. And I, for one, would want to have a discussion with town council about the legal implications of that. Particularly
Yeah.
since, yeah, I mean, I don't feel comfortable with that. And I think that would be the caveat that I would put in here is if that is the route that the board decides to take, I think that we need to seek guidance, legal guidance.
And I agree with you, Julie. I think, and I would put it a different way. I would say that's the argument to not grant a variance, because we don't have a clear-cut justification for why it's warranted. And so I agree that we should get more information and we should be seeking counsel as well as DEP and engineering input.
Daryl, I don't know if you can see the screen. Sean Colleen had previously had his hand raised. I don't know if he put it down, but he might have. I don't know if he wants to talk. And if you wanted to take other comments, I'm also recognizing we're coming up on 8 o'clock and we have other business.
I can make one comment if you want.
Daryl, is there any?
If it's brief, that'd be great.
What's up?
If it's brief, that would be great.
Yeah, just one clarification that nothing has changed from before we touched the drain to now. Anything we did, we undid. So the drain is exactly how it was the past 30, 40 years.
Yep. Okay. So, anyone else have any comments? I think, and I think what it'd be good to talk to town council about, I don't know that having a variance for some very specific situation where if we can find information that that provide technical input for us as to what this number is all about, and is it the right number or the right conditions associated with it, does not mean, or let's make sure it doesn't mean, that that opens up the door for all sorts of other variances for new construction. I don't see why that would be the case. I think this could potentially be the exception that proves the rule of not giving variances. But if there's some reasonable information out there about how to address this, I'm all for finding it.
Daryl, may I
This
address
is a
the board?
perplexing one. Just a moment. Does anyone else have any comments or questions before I go to Bob and Deshang? Okay, Bob.
So I'd like to offer up what might be a way out of this conundrum. You know, Daryl, I brought this to you 2 months ago, and we sat down in town hall with Jeremy and Sean and lots of other folks from the town, and basically no progress has been made over the 2 months since I raised this. I raised this 2 months ago because I knew it was going to be an issue tonight, and it is. And I was hoping over the 2 months to make some progress on it, and clearly we've not been able to. So I would like to propose that the way the board deals with the situation is this. I have offered the town an easement on my land. And by the way, it was incorrectly said that the pipe is on 53. The pipe is on this land, this lot that is before you tonight. It's on that lot 3. It was part of 55 Farm Road years ago. But I have offered an easement to the town to deal with this situation. The town is willing They think that it's wasteful because they don't think it's necessary, and they said that to you, Daryl, in the meeting 2 months ago. But the town has offered to take this water and bury it, to put it into a what is effectively a French drain or a BMP. And so that is our solution, because it's no longer, I don't believe, and other engineers have said that this is not an open surface drain, and I'm going to stand by that. However, if this board is going to take the position that it may be, and that was not the position it took when 53 Farm Road was before it, but if it's going to take that position, or take the position that maybe it is, maybe it isn't, which is kind of what I'm hearing tonight, I would offer up that this board approves the application in front of you for the septic system with 2 conditions. The first condition we spoke about earlier, which is that an A&R is delivered that has been endorsed by the planning board and recorded to show the legal lot lines, and also I think it was note 11 that Mark was looking for. And the second condition would be that the what is currently a pipe outfall that is draining the neighbor's property across the street inexplicably through the town catch basins, that would be put underground into a French drain, and therefore not be a regulatory issue for this board. So the condition would be that either that happens prior to the release of the permit that I'm seeking here tonight, or that the board could decide to change its rule and examine the science of it and change its rule. Either one of those 2 things would allow for the release of the permit. And that way the board could finish the dealing with this situation tonight, and not have to do either a variance or a denial of the application, or have to figure it out and change your rules now. And so I think that kind of gives all of us an out. I get what I want, which is a timely addressing of my application, and you get what you want. Either if the permit is released, it has to be because the drain has gone underground and is therefore not a problem with your regulations, or that you've changed your regulations. And that's my proposal to the board tonight, to get out of this painful conversation for all of us.
Okay, so I'd just like to mention to the board, so Jessica, can you update us? How many days have we had a complete application for this permit request?
We're out of the 45-day timeline as of last sorry, just looking back at my dates. It would have been last Monday.
Okay. So I would propose, and certainly happy to hear board comments on this. I would propose that we schedule it. Somebody's, oh, great. Thank you, Rebecca. That we take this question up again at our next meeting. And between now and then, I mean, Jessica did a great job at arranging to meet with the subject matter expert. I propose maybe we can try a follow-up that, or else contact others within DEP to find some information about this. And then we try to, hopefully that will be, I guess I'm optimistic that we'll find something that's illuminating and helps resolve this for us as to whether, is this an antiquated regulation is it in need of updating or not? And that would make it clear whether we're dealing with
But Daryl, you
With the
yourself said you're not
with the
going to
right
be
rules.
able to deal with this in a short period of time. We know you can't change your regulations in a short period. I've offered you an off-ramp, which gives you the regulatory
Bob,
protection that you need.
Bob,
You haven't even allowed the board to discuss my proposal.
well, we're about to get to that. I was commenting, and then we're going to go to the rest of the board. Please do not interrupt. Please raise your hand.
You don't call on me when I
Oh.
raise my hand.
We acknowledged you and asked you to wait until the board, as Julie pointed out, we don't get to talk about this outside of meetings. This is our time to deliberate. We don't have another time. And I think it's really important that the board has a chance to discuss it and air their concerns and questions and what they're comfortable with pursuing and not. That's just very important to the process, and we're not getting a chance to have that free flow right now for that. So, does anyone else have so let's see. I'm going to try and stay within the board for a moment. Eric, I see you, and Deshang, I see your hand up, but so Jessica, would you like to comment?
So, as everybody knows, I did meet with the subject matter expert and I uploaded my notes from the conversation for the full board to review. And additionally, I was wondering if, prior to this discussion, if other board members felt that there was sufficient enough time to review some of this background context as to how to, as Julie mentioned, keep our process consistent, even though some of us may not have been on the board. And so I'm wondering if it would be valuable, just so that we could keep this timely, to, I don't like the idea of, waiting until next meeting, but what about a continuing conversation, an additional special meeting if needed in between, where we could sort of provide updates on how this is progressing?
How does this board feel about another meeting between now and 2 weeks out?
I'm gonna say no to an additional meeting. I think it's either now or in 2 weeks would be I think I personally have a lot going on. It would be hard to find a time, and I suspect it would be hard to find a time on short notice to get a quorum.
To get a quorum, yeah, I was thinking the same thing, but we haven't even asked everybody. Oh,
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think we go for the 2 weeks. Having an additional meeting, I don't think is going to help that much. I think we can look at information. I mean, Jessica can give us a lot of information between now and then. But yeah, I think we go for the 2 weeks.
I'll also mention that if anyone does any research and finds something that you think is of interest, please send it to Jessica and then she can send it out to the rest of the board. So just for open meeting law, so that we're not deliberating, we're just sharing information. I am going to call on Eric Johnson.
Thank you, Daryl. Just a note on what Bob had mentioned there. One of the things that complicates this is really the fact that this water generates from this the town's stormwater system. And whether I like that, and some people talk about the genesis of that water from another private property, it's still ultimately a daisy chain catch basin system, which actually is owned by the town and actually does discharge this property. With that, I think there's some interest in actually considering the easement in the BMP, because then at some point, even foregoing the concerns of the Board of Health, at least we'll take care of any future liability or future interests of the property owners, because it is unfortunately a discharge that's done without the benefit of an easement. I've heard there's some verbal agreements back in the 70s, and that's pretty much worth the paper it's written on. So I would actually, just my thoughts on things that, that's what complicates this amongst everything else. I know you guys, you're charged to look at the science of this, but on the legal side and the fact that this water really does generate from the town system, I think is something to consider. And then to further consider might be a benefit of actually having an easement and having some structure in there that the town maintains that manages this water, no different than anything else we're required to do around the town. For essentially anything that goes in our system is our water, and that's creating this. Okay,
Well,
that's all.
so I have a question for you then. Certainly, if this was not an open drain swale on the surface, but was something subsurface, then it's a non-issue for us on the regulatory front. The question is, would the town do that anyway? Or would it only be done if we don't approve the permit because of the existence of the current situation? And maybe that hasn't been determined yet.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say, it came up in our meeting in August that the town is also concerned that they may start, as stormwater management systems are constructed and improved and whatever else, that this may be a recurring issue, whereas really until a couple of years ago, we really hadn't seen this issue.
I mean, you have to go case by case, but to be honest with you, yeah, when the town owns the right of way, owns the roads, if there's catch basin in that right of way and it discharges on the private property, it's problematic. I hear that happens a fair amount around town. I don't want to quote anyone, but I am concerned about it, and I deal with it in my day job. And you have to manage it. You own that water. It's a difficult situation. It really is, and it's highly unfortunate. I want to stick to this case right here, in which case, no matter what, whether it was an open drain or whatever it is, we still own it. Whether it goes, I mean, so that's the problem to it. Without the benefit of an easement or some kind of written agreement or something along those lines, I gotta look case by case because I don't want to open up a whole legal can of worms of whatever we have in these outfalls going on there. And Sean can probably speak.
No, it is hard to talk about in general because devil's in the details.
And to be clear, I've offered the town an easement for 2 or 3 years. That has been an offer that I have made. I want to solve this problem. It's obviously, as Eric has described, it's an issue. And if you think it through, it's the town's water coming onto my land, and then the town's going to tell me I can't develop it because of the town's water coming onto my land. I mean, that's kind of the definition of insanity. So again, I would like to put forth that the board take action on my application tonight, and the condition of the release of the permit be that the pipe be buried. So it's no longer, as you said, Daryl, a regulatory issue. I would like you to vote approval of the system subject to that condition. That's my request to you tonight.
I would suggest that the board continue with the plan proposed by our chair, and we wait till next meeting when we have had proper time to do evaluation and assess as much information as we can get. I'm sorry, Mr. Murchison, if you're planning to develop this land and you're granting an easement, but you're planning to turn around and sell the property, I don't think it's really as relevant as it would be if it was your land, you were going to live there for the next 30 years. So I think that the town has to think about the town the same way the Board of Health has to think about the town. The engineer has to talk about the roads, and we have to talk about public health and the implications for that. So we have to do it with as much information as we can.
The board has heard my request.
I'm speaking. I'd like to get a sense from the board about whether people feel ready to make a motion of some sort this evening and vote, or to wait until next meeting.
Daryl, I have a question, and I don't know, it's maybe Eric or maybe even Sean knows the answer. I just want to have some assurance that the French drain that's being proposed for the for the underground, it's technically feasible. That is, someone can say, yes, in fact, that's possible. And Eric, can you help me out with that? I want to make sure we're not setting up a false house of cards here.
Apologize for the casual dress here, by the way. I was just making dinner. From what I understand, the flows are pretty low. I might look to Sean in time about the flows, but the flows are pretty low. And yeah, it's feasible. I mean, put these things, for my day job, we put these things in all the time. And low flows are just like, not that hard to manage. I still want to, look to Sean and maybe confirm that we don't have surges, but I know we don't. It's like 3 catch basins. They're all kind of above grade and plus 1 dewatering pipe that's put in there. Yeah, I'll say that this is feasible. These flows are not that great, and I've managed much more than these. It's yeah, it's feasible.
And just so people know, there are lots of devices out there to choose from, and some are fairly small. I would say the cross section would be less than a square foot for some of them, depending on the flows. So it's not an enormous, the giant cast concrete pipes or anything like that. They can be relatively modest for these kinds of low flows.
The biggest problem, I think, in a lot of health issues is that, you have to plan for the exceptions to the rule. I mean, it's low flow, but then when you have a big storm or something, that's when these issues come up. And that's what we're supposed to be planning for. Or we should at least be considering it and making an informed decision, which is why my vote is to get as much information as we can and make a logical and thoughtful decision at the next meeting or when it's on the agenda.
And I'm just wondering about like the town's commitment on a timeline, if they were to go with the easement. I mean, because I don't feel comfortable approving something and then the town doesn't do anything for 20 years.
Well, no, Diana, what I've said is I don't get the permit unless the town does the work. So if the town takes 20 years, I don't get the permit, and it expires in 2 years, by the way. But you are completely protected by my proposal, right? In other words, I can't get the permit unless the pipe is buried. It's as simple as that. And I don't understand about kicking this can down the road for 2 more weeks. What is this board going to learn that is going to change it from this solution? This is a workable solution. And I don't understand, I brought this up 2 months ago, and now I desperately like.
And at the time, the town did not sound keen on pursuing that route. So that's part of what this is. It sounds
because
like
they
maybe
didn't
that
think
has
it was
changed, but it hasn't been relayed to the Board of Health.
Because they didn't think it was necessary. But Eric is here, Jeremy is here, Sean is here. They're all willing to commit to do this. So let's just
And I'm wondering, Daryl, if we're looking at 2 issues. One of them is the project at hand, and the other one is reviewing the data to really take a look at our regulations and at a future date, make an informed decision about how the 125 feet and what a sign says about that. Because if the town's willing to do the pipe, that does get rid of the issue.
So I guess I'd like to hear from, if there's anyone who, on behalf of the town, who would be involved with pursuing that project, where do they stand on whether we make a condition on a permit of that nature?
I'm more than happy to speak about it.
Sure. Go ahead, Sean.
And as I'm saying this, remember that my boss and 1 select board member's on this meeting, but it's not a full consensus that we're going to build that system. I think it's safest that you use the conditions that Mr. Murchison put out, that you either we build the system or you regulate out of it. I'll build it if I'm told to do it by Jeremy and the select board, but I think it's a colossal waste of money. And it's not a small amount of money. We've spent tens of thousands of dollars talking about it, hiring engineers to look at something that I'm not sure you'll ever convince me has any bearing on that septic system. So we'll be building a system, and there's places in town that we have stormwater outfalls we should be working on. This isn't one of them. And I can tell you that this stormwater outfall will not fix the freezing issue on Farm Road, so we will have spent probably north of $30,000-$40,000 on this and not solve a single problem that I see. So if you're gonna condition it on either the system, or you look at your regulations really hard and understand why you asked the town to spend the money on it. Thanks.
Thank you for clarifying that. It was the sense I got at the meeting in August.
Daryl,
Anyone
as
else
an
on the
engineer,
board,
I don't know if
uh,
I can help.
No,
work with
hold
the
on,
board.
Deshang, hold on. We're still just trying to get, as a board, get our heads around this issue of the open drain and how to resolve it. I'm still in favor of researching more about it to see if this is a reasonable request for the regulations made. So anyone else on the board want to speak?
So Daryl, I just want to, I'm sorry, this is
I know
Julie.
it's getting quite, yes, getting quite late, so.
No,
Do you have a?
But I just want to make sure I understand what your, I'm going back to what Diana said, which I agree is, I think we have two buckets. I think we need to research and understand this regulation and then adjust it as necessary, which is a timely process. I think in the present, we have an application before us. And I think what you're continuing to say is with research, if we determine that the 125 is not scientifically justified, that the way we would deal with the present application is through a variance. And again, if that's the pathway, I would want to seek counsel. I would
I agree with that.
And so I actually like this idea of the easement and potentially the French drain. It's been questioned. I mean, if Sean brings up the question, if we actually need to spend the money on this, I don't understand if we need to spend the money on this. I'm going to go back to process, which is we are acting differently than this board acted in 2021. And I'm still with that. And I question if it sounds like an easement would be mutually beneficial. And I think that would be a great way to at least move forward with that. I think the part that I'm wondering is if the French drain is necessary. That's where I stand.
I think I have a third option for the board to consider. If you'd like to hear, as engineer, designed, understand the site probably better than anybody, so technically.
Well, you don't know that, but go ahead, Shang.
Okay, I may be a little bit boasting, but I would like to suggest this. I agree with the Sean, okay, that to put in this as a French drain is not necessary. You're not benefit any technical.
Okay, hold on a
No,
minute.
let me finish. If you let me
I'd
finish my.
I'd like to hear the option. We're running very late, so.
That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. The option is to create an easement, just drainage easement from this pipe all the way down to the 24-inch pipe. So this will give the town future any maintenance patient if to a point, and after you do all your research to show that pipe going under the ground is necessary. And from all my understanding from 2021, in the July 2021, we have a very wet summer. I personally was there, see the water flowing through. The neighbors were taking a photo. All the board know that the water is flowing in that pipe. But at the same time, we did approve the system because we consulted with DEP. DEP knows this water just coming in from the drainage. There's no difference than the water just coming out of like a downspouts and go through a swale of upland. Okay, this is important. So therefore, the surface drain with the vegetation let the water flow through and the uptaking is even better than underground. So just giving an easement to maintain that drain for the future. But I think then you have the time to approve, just like you approved the 53. No difference. So the setbacks and the impact, so lot 3 and number 53, there's no difference from the knowledge to the board and the knowledge to all the review and the knowledge to the design engineer. So there's no significant environmental impact. That's one. That's the first solution. Second, I would like to comment on your regulation. If you go into your regulation, you have no clear definition of open surface drain. And I had provided a letter dated March 11th, 2022, analyzing very detail from technical and the impact, because what is the difference of the surface drain of this pipe for such a smaller flow, and then just the downspouts coming down to the swale on the side of the house, and which is 10 feet from the septic system. There's no difference. But if this surface drain become a wetlands, that's the one triggering the real impact, because then the groundwater coming from the septic will impact because they will reaching out. Right now, the water is all going down to the ground. So I have been there numerous times, recorded, even you have a little bit of water coming out of your catch basin drain, but it's seeping into the ground most of the time when they couldn't even make it all the way to the driveway for 55 farm lot. Okay, so that's a technical, and definitely the regulation, in my view, is clear, it's enough. But I think the understanding and interpretation of the board of open surface drain at this point, it's just forgive my arrogance, was not clearly defined, or the understanding of the impact putting into the interactions of surface water and groundwater and septic systems is not correct. I have to say that, as a technical person. So if I said wrong, I will coming back, I would admit it. But I think this project as now can be approved. And so just with the surface drainage, we already have a surface drainage easement through 53 to our to 65. We just need to extend probably 10, 20 feet to the end of the pipe and leave that it is, as Sean commented on, why we want to waste $40,000 of the town money to do something, and there's no technical environmental benefit. So that's my third solution. It's similar to Bob's, but I feel first the project can be approved subject to an easement extended to the pipe, and then the town can have all the options down the road they want to do it, because there's no significant impact difference from 53 septic and this one. So thank you.
Well, I'll say that I'm not comfortable putting that kind of requirement on for something that I'm questioning the requirement. But if someone wants to make a motion this evening about something to do from the board, then
But my point
we can
is,
consider that. Excuse me, Bob, still,
you just don't let the applicant speak at the meeting? Is that how this works?
Bob, you've spoken. I've heard more from you than from the board members, so I'm really.
Well, it is my application.
This is a difficult issue for the board. It's,
Clearly,
as Julie's pointed out, it's about
Clearly.
process. It's about
clearly it
the
is.
regulations that we have and the quality of them and how we want to deal with that now that we have an issue that's come before us that is murky. And again,
But I have offered a solution that
allows.
allows the project to be compliant with your regulations. I've offered a solution that is compliant.
And we'll take that, we're taking it under consideration.
I'm asking for you to vote. I am asking for a vote tonight on my application. You want to vote it down? vote it down.
We are not obligated to vote tonight. We might take a vote if someone wishes to propose a motion, or we might do it at the next meeting. So, where do board members stand? Ready to vote on something this evening or add it to the next agenda?
I already stated my stance is to vote at the next meeting.
I'm in agreement with that. I think we need a little bit more time just to understand this. I know a lot of new information came out at this meeting, especially between what Sean and Eric brought up, and Bob. I just think we need time to digest it.
I think that's fair. I think that I'm feeling very comfortable with the easement. I would like to understand a little more about the French drain, and I certainly think that this is a separate issue than the regulatory update. But it sounds like this needs to percolate a little bit, but if we don't vote tonight, I would like to see this on the agenda in 2 weeks. And I would hope that we'd be able to vote then.
Well, and I would like to pursue looking at the current regulation further as a long-term solution. And I'm not quite understanding. I mean, I understand the easement, okay, and burying the pipe, then it's a non-issue. But if the town's not going to do anything about it, then the pipe won't get buried and nothing happens.
Okay. So it sounds
So I'm
like
thinking voting, yeah, I'm thinking, oh yeah, we can vote, but if we vote with that condition, Bob still got nothing.
Well, but
So
we can always come back, Diana, and in
we
other
can
words,
always come back, Bob, on either side of the fence.
well, no, but what I'm saying is, if you give me an approval, which I am deserving of an approval because I have put before you a compliant application, and I'm asking for you to vote whether it's compliant. And I'm asking you to say, we will release the permit if the pipe is buried or another solution is arrived at. That's Diana, that's the other piece to it, right? Is that then that gives you the time to come up with other solutions, which would save the town the money, which I would be in favor of,
Well, or if the
obviously.
town doesn't sound like the town's going to do anything, Bob, that's not the impression
No,
I
that's
got.
absolutely incorrect. Eric and Jeremy and Sean have said the town will do this. They've said that.
I
This-
also heard it was a waste of money to put in a French drain.
Yes, it is a waste of money. It doesn't protect the public health, but it arrives at a regulatory solution for you, which we arrived at a regulatory solution on 53 Farm Road, but now we can't get there on this one, which doesn't make any sense to me. But
it does to me.
My proposal protects you. It is a regulatorily compliant proposal. And that's why I want you to vote yes on it, because it is compliant. And I don't understand what you're going to learn over 2 weeks. I brought this to you 2 months ago because I didn't want this to happen. And now it's happening, even though I brought it up 2 months ago. And that's the frustrating thing for me, Diana. That's why I'm frustrated, because I brought it to you and the can got kicked down the road for 2 months. And now you're saying, oh, well, we'll deal with it in 2 weeks. But I don't understand what you're going to learn in the next 2 weeks that's going to make the outcome any different from my proposal, which is why I'm asking you to do it tonight.
Well,
I mean,
as I
let's
mentioned,
let's also
Jessica,
look at the big picture about what we're trying to accomplish here. We're trying to build 5 homes on this land ultimately, instead of 32. And I'm asking for this board not to give me any variances, just to work collaboratively with me so that I can propose compliant applications to you. That's what I'm asking. And that's why I came to you 2 months ago. And I gave you 2 months to figure this out. And the town administrator was there, Sean was there. Everybody was willing to work with you guys to come up with a solution. And now we're 2 months down the road and you're saying, well, let's just go another 2 weeks down the road. That's not a fair process. It's simply not.
Daryl, I know it's late, but do you want to, Brian Moore has his hand up. Do you want to take any comments or questions from the public?
Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Brian Moore, 49 Farm Road. I live right next to 55 and 53 Farm Road. A couple, just 3 brief things. Number one, the easement that's being discussed, if they're talking about the easement to the existing stormwater system that was installed in 53, actually drains right down to the property line. Now, Bob's talking about a separate easement for the construction of a stormwater infiltration gallery or subsurface drainage system. You know, I thought the process would be for that to be approved by the Conservation Commission because it may or may not fall, at least for an RDA, because it may or may not fall within their jurisdictional area before coming before you. So that's one thought I had. The applicant seems to be in a rush on this. One reason might be that there's a lawsuit at this point in time related to this parcel about whether it can be developed or not, whether it can be any further subdivided. And the lawsuit is in front of a judge in a court of law. And I believe that there's this concept of less pendens, which is where seeking permits for a parcel that's undergoing litigation about whether it can be developed at all. If you're going to condition this, it would make sense that you might want to add to your conditions that the applicant would have to satisfy the appropriate judicial body or adjudicator that this is a subdividable lot in the first place. And that the third point I wanted to make is that, as the applicant said, he's talking about 5 houses. Well, 5 houses, I believe, kicks this into stormwater requirements, not best management practices. And we're talking about a tremendous amount of development in an area that's flooded several times over the last few years. You probably have all seen the footage and the pictures. And as the people who live down gradient from that, I can tell you we're extremely concerned because all the stormwater conveyance stuff takes the stormwater and directs it straight at our well. And we don't have another place on our land where we can put a well. We don't have an alternative or a backup, and there's no public water. And if our well is fouled, we're SOL. And that's a terrible place to be. So I'm hopeful that there could be some thought put into this that would be, if you're going to approve anything for the applicant, that it takes into account our concerns as neighbors and down gradient properties to this lot. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think I'm getting the sense that the board is not feeling ready to vote on this tonight. And let's go, again, a lot to digest. I'd rather do this thoughtfully. That's my preference.
That's why I came to you 2 months ago.
And again, Jessica worked to find the subject matter expert. That dialogue was begun. It didn't get as far as maybe we would hoped, but the opportunity is there. The offer was made that they would work with us further.
And the public health considerations continue. They haven't changed, so that's our job.
Okay, so maybe shall we do a motion on this about whether we want to continue to the October 16th meeting, continue this discussion, and be prepared to receive any new information that comes to light in between now and then.
With friendly amendment, with the commitment that this will be on the agenda for the next meeting. I'm sorry, the date escapes me.
Yeah, October 16th, I'm pretty sure.
For the 16th. That was a motion, right?
Yeah, so you're moving the amended motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
So
Okay.
we're voting on discussing this on the 16th.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So moved. I mean, yay.
Okay, any further discussion about this now? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca, you were on mute.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye. Okay. All right. Let's move on to another item on our agenda. And can you bring that up? I can't recall.
Give me a second, Daryl, unless Jessica is faster than I am, which she probably is. Perfect. Thank you, Jessica.
All right. Let's do 266 Washington Street.
Okay, we can, if the board so wishes, the plan can be presented. We should have a copy for the presentation. Jessica, do you have it? Okay, thank you. This plan was done by Truax Engineering, and they're proposing to do a pool which has been approved. The pool was separate. They decided this week, Chris Canny, the building commissioner, called me to tell me the applicant decided to do the pool separate from the cabana. So as of, I believe it was yesterday, I approved the pool separate from the cabana, noting it was just for the pool, but they also want to put in a pool house, which will be a room, and it will have a bathroom in there. And that will be needing a sewage system. Now, the septic system itself has been designed for, I have it right here. Let me get to that point. I believe 6. The design flow is for, I have the 6 bedrooms. And they presently, in looking at their floor plans, just this over to the side. They presently have a house with 4 rooms on the first floor, 4 bedrooms on the second floor, and a bedroom on the third. Even though they don't call it a bedroom, they have a third floor room on the third floor, a room on the third floor. With that said, that would give them a total of 9 rooms and 5 bedrooms, and they have capacity for 6 bedrooms. So their room count would work in respect to the septic design flow, and they will need to tie the septic waste from the cabana into the present septic system that's built for 6 bedrooms.
Okay, and did they provide the floor plan for the cabana? It's not
They didn't,
multi-room or something?
It's on the building permit, and it's a room with a full bathroom in it.
Okay. But just one room, so,
1 room, yes.
okay.
I mean, they actually could go, I don't want to suggest it, but they could go up to 13 rooms with a 6-bedroom septic system, but this would make it 10 rooms after this is complete.
Okay, and this is something that we should be voting on now, or once you receive the final
Well, what'll happen, Daryl,
proposal
is
plan?
it can be approved now, but the building permit will be conditional to the startup of the septic system first, before they get the approval of the building permit. They could do foundation only if they so wish. That's been allowed in the past, but they actually have to start the septic system and only go up to rough electrical. Once the certificate of compliance is received for this present septic system being proposed, this proposed septic system, then they could go past rough electrical. That's how we do the building permits.
Okay, does anyone have any questions for Mark? Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the plans conditional to, Mark, would you repeat that again? How we should
Approve
condition?
the plans, but the building permit will be conditional to the start of the septic system. And once the septic system is started, they will then get approval on that building permit for up to rough electrical. And then once they receive their certificate of compliance for this septic tank tying into the present soil absorption system, then they can go past rough electrical and finish the job.
Okay. Would anyone like to move that?
So moved.
Seconded.
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye, with the conditions Mark stated.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Thank you.
Do you have any other business, Mark? There was
Yes,
one other.
we have an installer's permit on the agenda, and I would recommend approval. It's Repco. They've been working in town prior. They actually built the demolition reconstruction was at 156 Nason Hill Road, and they actually constructed the new septic system, and they worked very well with us. And now they're planning to put in the septic system for the house next door, which is a new house, and that's new construction. That is built. If you go by Nason Hill Road, you'll see the house, but they can't. And the water was approved for the potability back before they built the house. And it was approved on the building permit through our department, through my review. But now they have to install the septic system. They realized their installer's permit had expired. I would recommend approval of this installer's permit based on past history.
Do we have a motion to approve the installer's permit for Repco? Am I saying that properly?
That's right, Repco Incorporated.
So moved.
moved. Seconded.
Any other comments or questions? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Daryl Beardsley, aye.
Thank you.
Okay, and Jessica, would you like to go through the items?
Yes, absolutely. Let me just share my screen.
Oh, I don't know which, if you're
There we
gonna
go. Okay.
start with the
Yes. So I will start with
Dover Sherborn schools, yeah.
So Daryl, Julie, and I, along with Dover Board of Health and Dover Health Director, met with the Dover Sherborn Superintendent and Athletic Director to discuss collaboration and information dissemination and messaging regarding Triple E and West Nile virus. Now, as Sherborn is categorized as a lower risk community, we discussed establishing a mitigation and communication plan based on alert rollout, which we are all notified. Health departments boards of health are notified via the HAN alerts through text message if there is a risk of Triple E or West Nile virus in the area, or if there is a positive sample. Current recommendations for precautions include personal protection. So that's the use of repellents, limiting time outside at dusk, proper attire like long sleeves and socks, ensuring that facilities are in good repair, such as window screens or door screens, and removing standing water, which is a huge thing for athletes outside on field in the field, soccer and stuff like that. If there's standing water on the field, that could pose a risk. I have followed up with our Public Health Emergency Preparedness Coalition to see how other communities, even some that are higher risk, have addressed Triple E and West Nile virus specifically with their schools, and note that this collaboration will be ongoing and it will be adjusted as needed. So it's more of a sort of a scaffolding rollout in terms of how high the risk becomes. That is also a good segue into our Region 4AB coalition update. So as the board knows, I am a member of the executive committee, and I was just appointed as vice chair of the committee. So I'll be representing our committee at now the state level to discuss internal updates. And so one of the action items that I followed up with was regarding municipal criteria for participation. So I wanted to share with the board that in previous budget periods, there was a grant deliverable for local public health to conduct emergency dispensing site drills. And communities typically met this requirement through routine flu clinics. However, in this current budget period, there isn't a drill-related grant deliverable, and Sherborn will continue to maintain its standing through meeting participation, responding to HAN or Web EOC drills, which is our platforms for emergency notification, and participating in any regional planning activities and exercises. Transitioning into the flu clinic. So during this transitional period of when I came on board and in between Ellen's retirement, we did not, I believe, as a chance, have the opportunity to order the flu vaccines typically ordered between like March and May, I believe. And however, it may not be feasible, and as a result, it may not be feasible to hold a formal clinic this year. However, discussions, I would welcome any feedback from the board, and I've mentioned collaborating possibly with the Council on Aging on a joint clinic in the future, particularly focusing on having high dose availability for seniors. In the meantime, residents can feel free to reach out to the Board of Health for information on where they could get vaccinated. Dover is holding a flu clinic this year, and I have inquired on if there is limited spot availability for Sherborn residents if needed. It might also be possible to lean on our shared services contingent to host a joint clinic in the future, but as a board, we would need to discuss whether or not Sherborn residents would be open to traveling to a nearby location. But this also might help offset the cost and coordination efforts and the number of MRC volunteers who may be able to assist us with this. for our Sherborn 350th celebration, which is happening on Saturday, Jeremy mentioned to department heads that this would be a really, really great time to, you know, gather together some information about each department. And I think that this would be great, kind of shed some light onto what all the great things our department's doing right now, the Board of Health is doing right now. And so I've put together some information on PFAS and a homeowner's guide to septic systems. And these handouts were compiled from EPA, Mass DPH, and DEP. And it's a really, really great starting point for awareness and information. And finally, the 2024-2025 COVID-19 vaccines were FDA approved and authorized on August 22nd of 2024. These are now available at local pharmacies. So that's Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna, and Novavax. So we have ordered COVID-19 test kits for the upcoming season to be available to the public at Town Hall. And I will keep you informed as to when those come in and where they will be. And if you have any recommendations on other buildings, such as the library or the fire station or the police station, where you would like to see those in town, we will have 400 of them. So I think that that will be great and give some residents peace of mind. Additionally, free COVID tests can be ordered for individual household at covidtests.gov. So I was going to ask if Jeannie Guthrie may want to put that on our website for us, or I could also put it on our website for us so that residents know that that's accessible. And that's it for my updates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
So
400 tests. That's more than I thought we
So
were
there-
gonna get. Great. Sorry, Daryl.
there was good news from MassHon today that they no longer have any areas that are considered a significant risk for West Nile and Tripoli in the state. So based on recent testing. And it was nice to have the meeting with the schools because the last time EEE was prevalent, we did work with Dover Board of Health then too, with the idea that we wanted to be delivering the same messages to the schools to make it easier for the regional administration of the school system and have a cohesive direction. And there was a nice discussion with the school superintendent and also with the director of athletics. Okay, Diana.
I just had a question for Jessica about the materials that you put together for Sherborn 350. Will that be on the website? Did you have anything printed?
I have printed copies, but they will also be available on the website.
Okay, great, thank you.
Because of the fact that we are going to have a municipal table actually at Jamieson
Nice.
Field. So that will be all boards and all boards and whoever, wants to put information there.
Great.
It was our last item, minutes. Which I have to confess I started but did not finish. So
Yeah,
others are ready to vote, but I did not.
Same thing. I think we still have the March 18th minutes that we were going to vote on again to make sure we get a majority vote so they can be posted.
Now,
And then
do we need to view the tape first and then review the minutes, ideally?
So Jessica, were you able to confirm with Jackie whether it can be sort of an in-spirit report of the minutes?
Yes, it's an in good faith attempt. So if you've had the opportunity to review the minutes, and anybody could go back and watch the meeting, but if you're able to discern the information and feel comfortable enough to vote to approve the posting of the minutes, that is where we're at now.
I haven't done that, but if we're not gonna vote on those this time, I will do that for the next meeting. Because I wasn't at that meeting, but I should have been at the meeting. But life intervened.
I'd be
Uh,
happy to add these minutes approval to the next meeting if everybody needs more time.
Okay, so including for the March.
Yes.
March meeting, okay.
Unless Rebecca wanted, I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot, Rebecca.
I reviewed them, but I didn't I reviewed them. I did actually. Often I'm the rate limiting step, but this time I read them. I didn't have any changes. But you know, it doesn't help you because the rest of the board needs more time.
I think we're just.
I don't for the 8th, for that March meeting.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Go ahead, Julie.
I can't see you, Daryl, to read your face if you want to talk. What we're referring to is the March 18th meeting. Previously, so Steve was not on the board and therefore appropriate for him to not vote. Both Diana and Rebecca were not present at the meeting. And so we previously voted and Daryl and I had voted aye, and we had sent in changes, minor edits to Jessica. And then we found out that you do need a majority vote in order for these minutes to be able to be posted to the website. And so 2 abstentions leaves us in limbo and in a strange spot. And so in order for these minutes to ultimately get posted and be compliant, we need somebody to be able to vote aye in them to your comfort. And then
Or we don't
Okay.
have to post them, but we could make sure that they are available in draft form for anybody to ask.
Or we could do a motion and see if we trip into a majority tonight. If not, we could add it next time. So do we have a motion to approve the March 18th, was it?
Before you, can you repeat again what you said the law is? Because I was taught that since I wasn't present, I have to abstain. So what does the law say? Would you mind repeating that?
So my understanding from Jackie was that even though you were not present at the meeting, it is still a good faith effort. So if you are able to feel comfortable enough in discerning the information from the draft minutes and from, if you want, watching the meeting, then you could vote on that set and we could post them. Whereas since Steve was quite literally not on the board, it is appropriate for him to abstain from this set.
So is anyone interested in
I'll
moving the motion to approve the minutes of March 18th?
I'll move the motion. We'll see if we get a second.
Second, I can second that.
Sure.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
I haven't reviewed them yet, so abstain.
Your turn, Rebecca, or Steve, one or the other.
Steve Constantine abstain.
Yeah, let me see. I guess I can, if it's legal, then I'll vote to support the minutes in good faith.
Okay, and Daryl Beardsley, aye. Hey, did we miss anything? Okay.
So just confirming that for the next agenda, it will be these 2 sets, 17th and the, I'm sorry, the 17th and the 18th and the Farm Road open surface drain continuance.
Yes. Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Any other discussion? Hearing none?
Steve Constantine, aye.
Julie Dreyfus, aye.
Diana Hook, aye.
Rebecca Honeywell, aye.
Darrell Beardsley, aye. Thank you all.
Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.
Hey,
Good
And
night.
look
Thanks.
forward to exciting open surface drain information coming your way somehow.
Great.
Hey.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.